My friends, thank you for joining us. My friends over here on Periscope, welcome. Actually, we're already here, but we'll welcome you anyways, to the golden age of martial arts. We're in it. We're in it. Something that we've talked about as long as I've had the gift of being able to do this style of long-form podcast, we've talked about the fact that the last thing fish discover is water. We're the fish, and the martial arts is the water. And we are in the golden age of martial arts right now. This is not coming. This is not what's next. This is what's happening. And there are times, most times in human history, during the fall of Rome, people weren't sitting around going, well, we're in the fall of Rome. I guess that's it. And in, the age of, it takes years for people during the Renaissance. It takes years until they realize, hey, wait a second. There's something very special going on here. There's been something very, very, very special going on in the world of martial arts now for years. And it's time to pause and see it. See it. We are in the golden age of martial arts, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. Of course, we're going to talk about Mayweather versus McGregor. That was a beautiful fight, this incredible thing that we got a chance to see, that maybe we'll see a little more examples of this kind of thing in the future, but we got a chance to see dynamics that don't exist anywhere else, and that was incredible. We'll talk about it, of course. But I want to talk to you about the golden age of martial arts. I also want to talk to you about a large concept that I've been studying for about the last 3 years. It started with a conversation with Matt Hume, and then it continued from there. And it affected the way I study fights, fighters, and coaches. It's been going on for years. It was going to be difficult for me to find a way to get it across. It wasn't like one breakdown where we could go flim-flam, hashtag flim-flam, and try to get it across. It wasn't going to be like that. It was going to be a large concept of the reality of what we're in right now, what we're in, the age we're in the evolution of the organism that is fighting. And I was like, man, this is going to be a challenge. It took me years to figure out where we are, and it's going to take months to figure out how to put it into a way people can understand. Then McGregor-Mayweather came along, and I thought the bite size, the entry to this, the thing that would be so simple that people would understand would be McGregor looking to disrupt Mayweather. Thought, there's no way anybody couldn't grasp this. It's so fucking simple. You're tasked with beating the greatest boxer of the era. He's so good. And your normal job is, I must find holes in his game. He's such a master, there are almost no holes. So you go and you say, I must find holes in the game. Now, we've used the word disruption. People have already fucked with that word. And we're now going to, and this is normal, we're going to have to use language to be better at explaining what we're seeing. But I sat down with Connor's coach, genius that he is. And yeah, he confirmed this is exactly how we approach this. It's on tsn.ca, and it's here on this YouTube channel. It's worth a watch. John Kavanaugh is a brilliant man. We sat for a long time after, and we discussed for a long time before in correspondence. I was telling you how they approached it. That's how they approached it, with the idea that we will find bugs in the system of how boxing itself and yes, it's a mobile, moving, evolving thing, but it is a thing. We'll find bugs there. That's how they did it. And they failed. They failed because they couldn't do it. Unfortunately, we don't get to have a parallel fight and see how he would have done if he approached it a more standard way. Would he have got knocked out in the first round? Would he have gone 6 rounds? Would he have landed the big shot? Would he have been able to do any of the things that he did? We don't know. We don't know. But it failed. But I told you the approach. And why did I tell you this approach? Because there's a bigger concept globally that is happening. It is the moment we're in the river of the martial arts. And I was very excited to talk to you about it and fleshing out how McGregor was looking for the bugs in the system of how boxing evolved, I thought would be your bite-sized doorway to it. Not everybody understood it, and some people may have understood it, but tried to undermine it for their own purposes. I don't know why people do the things they do. But this is what they did, and it failed. So we're going to talk about many things related to this, and we're going to get on to the grand concept of where martial arts is in its evolution as a organism, because it is one. You know, I was driving through Chinatown yesterday, and then I thought, let's go up to Koreatown with my wife, and I went through Koreatown, and I looked at it, and I realized, I didn't look it up, but Mark, can you just quickly see when was Koreatown in Toronto established? So this Koreatown that we saw, that's not Korea moved here. Koreatown, Toronto established. That is not some of Korea in Toronto. If Mark can't find it, we're going to arbitrate.
That was around 67.
Around 1967? Yeah. Wow. So let's just say 1960. Now, he may have, you know, the quick Google search these days, we need to double search and triple search and fact check. Sad, but we do. There's all kinds of reasons that people try to undermine information. But let's just say the 1960s. Koreatown in Toronto is Korea in the 1960s, brought here and inspired, that then evolves separate from Korea. It's not Korea. It's its own thing, evolving in its own way. Starting in, let's say, 1967. Starts there, and then it gets all the information it gets. Now, as we get to 2010, Korea is going its way. Koreatown, little people moving back and forth between the two, having an effect back and forth between the two. But it's 1960 Korea in Toronto. Now it's its own organism. It's its own entity. But today, in 2017, with the exchange of information, the internet, and beyond the internet, the two influence each other very quickly. These are the simple thoughts that we're talking about in boxing and mixed martial arts, going into it. So I'm going to go off on a tangent. My ultimate end is to give you the big picture of what's happening globally in fighting. And the bite-sized approach was, this is boxing. It's evolved like Koreatown in 1967 and gone off on its own way. This other thing started in the late 90s, inspired by things that came from Brazil before that, and some things from Japan, inspired by wrestling, became its own thing, thinks its own way. And now we get this incredible gift of having this entirely different thought process try to do this thing. And much like their coach said, the only way we could do it is try to find the bugs in the system, because they're so good at this thing. If we try to do that thing, we'll be the 1,730th best boxer in the world against the best, and we can't do that. So we'll find a fucking disruption. We'll talk about what disruptions he attempted and where he failed. In failure, there's so much to learn. So much. There were things that happened that will forever affect the way that I view fighting. Forever. That's such an incredible gift. So let's just talk about what we saw for a second. I could tell you what I saw, and about 40% of you would be like, fucking right, so I saw that too. And then 40% of you would be like, you're delusional. And that 40% and that 40%, both of them will argue with each other, and their point will be, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot. If we could figure this out, we would cure everything that is happening in North America, Canada, the US, England, a lot of the places in the world. If we could figure out why I saw McGregor have incredible success in round one against the best boxer in the world, and somebody else said, this guy let him win that round, fought down to the level of his opponent, and gave it away for these reasons. If we could figure out why two people see the same exact thing, but fully disagree and think the other one's an idiot, we would solve almost every problem in the world. So I'm not equipped to do that. And what's interesting about it is we spend a lot of time trying to figure that one out. Not all of us. Sometimes we just go, no, you're an idiot. The world's flat, you dumb fuck. I don't know if Eddie does believe that. Because now we get to a point where there's many other reasons we say things. Did Max Kellerman really believe that he wouldn't land a punch? He might have. But he also might have realized that his job in television is to create controversy. So he probably thought he wouldn't do very well, but saying that wasn't going to get him in every conversation, wasn't going to get Dana White talking about him, wasn't going to get me going, Max Kellerman, you're a fool. So there's a lot of different reasons, and it's those reasons that change the message and why we're fighting about all the same things. We both watched that fight. I will default as best I can, because I'm also a passionate individual who is informed by my belief systems. But wherever I can, I will default to what can we learn? And if all you are interested in is the outcome, the result, he's right, he's wrong. So therefore, that's the end. And that's okay, because there's a million other areas in your life that you're examining them differently. My wife she's a singer. She goes to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And I was speaking with the receptionist, and she was awesome, this lady. First time I met her. And she's like, yeah, I just hated the way that guy talked. I'm like, this is fine. She goes, if he'd have just gone in there and been more humble about it and said, I'd like to take on the challenge of this guy, I might have been more for him. To which I said, well, that fight wouldn't have existed if he did that. And she was like, you're right. Well, I still hate him. And I was like, this is perfect. He needed that to happen to make this happen. These are all logical things, right? But so we're all seeing different things. So what do we do about that? Do I come in here and explain to you how and why Conor McGregor was able to get through the defenses of Floyd Mayweather? Really, there's one giant punch, which you can just say, well, that's a fluke, and then the conversation's over. Or you can say, oh, he did it differently, and he didn't see it because he's programmed to react to an uppercut a different way, and that's the end. But I don't know that that's the right approach either. So what can we do? What can we do that's different? Do we stake outside? It's like, he tried to disrupt him, he did it a lot, but then he lost. Or do we go over here and go, see, McGregor sucks? When we started, this was the best in the world, and this guy had never boxed. Some success was had. That's impossible. It's impossible under the guidelines and the structures that people created. So then they explain it away. The hashtag, my hashtag, congrats, you've learned nothing. Feel free to use that as much as you want. Use it back at me. That came when I talked to a boxing guy before, and he goes, Floyd's going to kill this guy. This guy's not even going to be able to touch him. And after that fight, I was so invigorated. I was so excited by it. It sucked that the MMA guy lost. It sucked that the idea that thinking differently could make the impossible possible didn't get proven enough. Sucked that Dana looked exhausted and and it was so invested. This guy was so invested. In the days I saw him, he was so fucking tired because he was allowed to cheer. He's not normally allowed to cheer. He won't allow himself to cheer. But so this boxing guy said he can't touch him. So after I see him and I'm thrilled, I was man, that was amazing. I can't believe it. And I said, what did you learn, man? And he goes, I learned that Floyd fights down to the level of his opponent. And I suddenly realized, you've taken the only perspective possible that would prevent you from learning anything. You've explained away something that would give you so many amazing ideas, lessons, good and bad, successes and failures, mistakes. I thought he was successful, but actually it was a fluke. That can all be learned. Unless you say, I will completely dismiss it all. Floyd let it happen. Fights down to the level of his opponent. I will learn nothing. It's like, come on, man. So let's talk about a few things. One, people will, despite the fact that my entire thesis was this will be his approach, I didn't say it would work. Although on Saturday morning, I'm like, he's going to do it. He's going to fucking do it. I was out with the Irish the night before, and they got me fucking razzled up. For 10, 12 hours, we examined it like it's near impossible. It's highly unlikely, but the only way you could win in a fight where somebody's better than you at the thing is to try to find flaws in the system, bugs in the system, holes in the game where we can beat him. And his coach said, that's exactly what we did. And yet, bizarrely, there were people still denying that that was it. Maybe they don't want that to be true. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's, it's existential. They think this way and now this other way is threatening or challenging to their system. Or maybe it's something more insidious. Maybe, I 10x'd my exposure through doing this truthful and factual example of how he would approach it. as said by his own team, and they were hoping to get something from disagreeing with it. That's fine. However, this is what happened. This is how he approached it. Were there examples of this? The whole fight was examples of this. Unless, again, you choose to prevent that. Many examples. I'll talk about two specific ones, but basically the two both fall in line with what I thought the strategy was, and their team told me the strategy was, which was try to win far out and win in close. Far out, landed a few punches. That jab was working by being in conflict with what many people believe and sliding in on an angle, something you see a lot in MMA. I'm sure there's been a lot of that in boxing for many years. However, Floyd was, that's not going to work. Once you think something might not work, it actually could work, right? So, however, out there, ultimately, once he slowed down, especially, which was all credit to Floyd, who slowed him down, that started to fail. But what I found the most interesting conflict of your belief system and my belief system, me being Conor and you being not Conor, the Floyd, the greatest at what he does, who's developed like Chinatown or Koreatown, 1967, came here, and then it started off on its own path. And over here, they're like, well, actually, we've changed entirely different. I was in Seoul. Seoul didn't look like Koreatown here, but then I'd be in a different city in Korea or a small town, and it does. Because these things, they fucking go off on different streams. It's so obvious. They're just little evolutionary streams that are part of the growth and change that is the world of fighting. So one of the ones I found most interesting, and again, on paper, and not even on paper, it failed. But if you look at it, it's fascinating. So Conor, he had to look for places that were unfamiliar to Floyd. Now, why would anything be unfamiliar to Floyd? Because most people don't do them, right? If you don't like the word disruption, if it's been overused or whatever, we'll find new words. But basically, if most people, everyone you train with, the average approach, the things you are preparing yourself for, don't do something, that's the things we're going to try to do. Now, they may fail, but we think that's a better approach than trying to just beat you at your own game. So the back take. The back take to me was fascinating. And Andre Ward, who is a disruptor in his own right, bringing outside ideas, disruptions always come from the outside, gathering ideas from outside and pulling them inside to where he fights. Andre Ward's a genius. Some of my favorite performances of the last few years have been watching Andre Ward. And he's a brilliant fighter. And he watched McGregor take Mayweather's back, and he said, man, that McGregor did well. A lot of great boxers said that, by the way. Now, weirdly, people far less educated and experienced who've never fought, and I know most of us haven't fought. Fighting's fucking crazy. Said he disagreed with George Foreman or Andre Ward or any of these guys. Good luck with that, by the way. And people will agree with the disagreement. That's fine. Andre Ward was like, I don't know why you let him take his back. I know why. And it's a fascinating dynamic of the belief systems that we're trying to conflict to win this fight. McGregor is like, where can we go? How can we attack this in a way that people don't do? Either because they believe it's wrong, or because it's been a seam that people ignored, or as Koreatown evolved from 1967 without being in contact with Korea that much, it forgot certain things that are there, or things that used to work we don't do anymore. All of these are different types of disruption. Going back, something people forgot in 1920. Or in boxing's great disruptions in its own lifetime has been through the bringing in of wrestling. There have been huge disruptions. Any boxing historian, all you got to do is Google boxing wrestling history, and there'll be dozens of articles. And the different moments in time, people far more educated than I, different moments in time where wrestling was brought in and it disrupted how boxing thinks. That's Koreatown. However, the last time just in the last few months, in MMA gyms that have boxers, I asked, and this is a small sample size, how many of you train wrestling? And it's tiny. And I asked the boxing coaches, how many of you go in and explore? It's tiny. Infighting is this. Talked to Ryan Ford, who was a very high-level MMA fighter who now boxes. And he's like, 99 out of 100 guys I get in that clinch, and they do this, infighting. What is infighting? It's Koreatown. Infighting developed the last few big disruptions in boxing. They brought wrestling in. They said, this is what works. They created a system, and that system now evolved in its own right. And that system left out, to a great degree, not entirely. And this is where some of the challenge is in short bite-sized time, especially 3 minutes on television. You say something like, well, boxing doesn't take backs. Somebody will be like, are you fucking kidding? I watched 40 boxing matches this year. 3 of them, guy kept taking his back. Okay, so it is. There is some of that. But going around to somebody's back, using your right hand on their right hip bone to yank yourself to the back, stabilize yourself with pressure in such a way that you have leverage with your left hand, that's a very typical approach in MMA and a very unconventional and rare approach in boxing. So that's what you do. You disrupt that. You go in, most people don't do this, therefore I'll do it. All right? The fact that it failed tells part of the story. I attempted to disrupt you with something that you were not expecting, because most people in your world throughout your lifetime of studying of it have either forgotten it, ignored it, or rejected it for any number of reasons, many of them valid, probably most of them valid. I'm going to try to go there. So he goes there. Starts trying to hammer, Floyd covers up. As Floyd covers up, let's disrupt the rules a little bit. They say you cannot hammer fist the back of the head. I think we have different definitions of cannot. Right, Mark? I mean, I saw him do it a whole bunch of times, and no penalty was given. Cannot is the wrong word. They ask you not to, or they recommend you not to, or the rule book states, despite the fact that it will not be enforced, not to. But you can, because he did. Again, it failed. He did not win. But there's your fucking evidence of disruption. And trying to fire up in there. Now, why did it not work? Incredible. This to me was just like, poof, my brain, bam. Because the back take means different things to the MMA fighter, his mind, his belief system, than it does to the lifetime boxer. If Conor McGregor was in a boxing match with Stipe Miocic or Demetrius Johnson or anybody who's trained a lifetime of MMA, they would not just give up that back. They would fight it. And awesomely, and this is awesome, this is fucking amazing to me, Mayweather didn't, because the back take means something different to him. If you've trained a lifetime in MMA, when someone takes your back, your throat is in jeopardy. You are only a few steps, this, to prevent that, to fight that, to fight that hand. You are now only a number of sequences away from the fight being over. So for your lifetime, the meaning of somebody taking your back is, holy shit, I don't want that to happen. So you will resist. No, again, generalizations are a big problem in these conversations, but most people do not want to give up their back. There are exceptions, plenty of them. Because if somebody takes your back, you may be able to get to half guard if you're very good at that, and all of a sudden, you actually advance your position. But for the most part, when somebody takes your back and you've trained MMA all your life, that is such an advantageous position that you don't just surrender it. Conor was hoping those back takes, Floyd would wrestle against the larger man with less technical wrestling to attempt to prevent the back take. This is something I talked at length with Faraz Sahabi about the week before. The two of us, and I hear he has done something about grappling on there. I haven't seen it, but I know what it is because he and Faraz is a genius and it's a gift when I talk to him. And my big concept, global concept I'm going to explain today involves a lot of these geniuses and what I've learned from them. So me and Faraz talked about it and he's like, man, you start trying to grapple. When a boxer starts trying to grapple a wrestler, they fatigue, pressure on the back of their head, which we saw a lot of, and really controlling them. You fight back against that when somebody outweighs you by 25 pounds and technically a better wrestler, you will fatigue. I think that was the goal. Let's make Floyd tired. And when I talk to top coaches and top fighters, they're like, if he can get him into a Greco style or judo style grappling match, infighting versus a high boxing, infighting as developed and beautiful as it is as an art form, that's Koreatown. It spread off here, was influenced by what it was influenced, and then lived its own life. And over here, they have explored every element of wrestling, and it's so much a part of mixed martial arts that you think differently about it. But Floyd sensed it, felt, and this is genius. This shows you the kind of genius that Conor couldn't predict, and how you beat disruptions with foundations, with true principles. Because I'll come back to the back take in just a second, but what is a disruption? What is this idea? And I'm going to expand on it big time with my story of the last 2.5 years. But what it is you believe that principles, you believe that things that are not true principles are rules. So if you believe something is a rule, and I know that it is not a rule, I will take advantage of you with that. All right? So, but a principle or a truth, a true truth, if I drop something, gravity makes it hit the ground. If I have blood in my nose, it's hard to breathe, or harder to breathe. These are truths. These are undeniable truths that happen every time, 100% of the time. But if you believe that, no big deal, my back is taken, or you believe, oh my God, I better prevent a back take, you act a certain way. But Floyd beat that with a basic overarching principle, non-resistance. To me, that was the greatest point of the fight. The fucking coolest point. The point where you're like, okay, Floyd is so much far beyond. You can disrupt him and he'll go back to the principles. He'll go back to the universal truths. And that's how he will counteract your disruption. Floyd just went with non-resistance. If I fight this man, I will fatigue. I probably will not win in exchanges, grappling exchanges to prevent him from getting to my back. And he's bigger and it will require more energy. Non-resistance, Mark dropped his phone if you're wondering what that was. Non-resistance is like, well, he's going to get there. Once he gets there, I'll go back to some of my other things, which is protect at all costs. So he protected at all costs. Nothing is available to Conor except breaking the rules. Breaking the rules is its own form of disruption. Because what are rules? We may get a chance to talk about that yet today. Tangent? Can I get permission for a tangent? Every single fighter who does not use one eye poke is fighting at a disadvantage. Because rules are illusions. Much like some of these rules, always do this and never do this, those are illusions. I'll talk about that as we get to the big picture. Because you will get away with one eye poke. And what is a rule? Something that is powerful, we're not going to let you do it. It's too powerful. Now, we can argue what powerful means. You'll be like, no, it's just because it's dangerous. That's a form of powerful. You can say, nah, because it makes us seem like savages. Well, it's pretty powerful if it makes you seem like a savage. Nah, that is unfair. It's threatening to your body. That's pretty powerful. Something is so powerful you cannot do it. If it's that powerful, you probably do it. It's so fucking powerful. Especially if it's just a guideline or a lie. That rule is a lie. No eye pokes. That's a lie. And when you're fighting John Jones, you have to do an eye poke. You have to. Otherwise, it's so powerful. This is a tool, a martial tool that is so powerful. It hurts you. It hinders your vision, which hinders everything. It waters your eye. It shocks you. It affects your nervous system. This is incredibly powerful. If you fight John Jones and you do not poke him in the eye, you are fighting at a disadvantage. Now, how and what that means and why that means and everything, that's for another day. Because the argument could be, yeah, but, the rules. It's so powerful. He's going to do it to me. I will be at a disadvantage. What choice do I have? I have to circumvent, disrupt, break, work around, whatever word you want to use. We are martial artists, and this guy has a powerful tool that I don't have. So, do I believe in honor? Do I believe in respect, honor, the beauty of the code? Fucking rights I do. But not to my disadvantage when I am being penalized for believing in that. So anyways, McGregor, hammer fist to the back of the head. Nothing there. Going to the back take is there because we believe different things. So I can get there and I have skills outside of your skill set, the disruptive skills to go to your back. Why did it not work? Because there are different meanings to the back take. The MMA meaning is, holy shit, I'm in jeopardy. The boxing meaning is, I am in jeopardy. This is dangerous, but I believe I can cover up, and I can do it and use non-resistance to let you get there. And think of this. Think of this choice Floyd made in almost no time. It's this A-B analysis that he made correctly, which was a part of winning this fight. This man, bigger, stronger, I felt him go to my back. I don't know exactly how to prevent that. If I try to prevent that, I will use more energy than him, and he's a bigger, stronger man, and there will be holes as I try to prevent that. But if I use the principle of non-resistance, he will take my back. I will then be forced to cover up in such a way. Wow, jets flying low. I wonder what the fuck that's about. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't know if you guys heard that. It was low. So I will then cover up, which then, after getting hit in the back of the head, he now has to again analyze. Do I try to prevent this back take by this MMA fighter who has tools different than me and I can't prevent it? And I'll get tired and he's bigger. And if I get tired, that can be a huge jeopardy. Or do I use non-resistance to let him get there, cover up as best I can, and accept the fact that this fucker is going to break the rules, and that is a danger to me. And, A-B analysis, this choice is still the better one. So the fact that happened and Andre Ward sat there looking at it, if he happens to watch this, if so, Andre, I'm a huge fan of your work. Big fucking fan. He'll look at that and go, oh, fuck. This little weirdo is right. You have to choose. Why did he let him take his back? Because the other choice was worse. And the other choice was the one that the disruptive mind of the mixed martial artist was trying to make him make. Why did it fail? Because Floyd's fucking better than him. That's why that failed. Was it the wrong choice? No, it was the right choice. Because the wrong choice would have been don't even try it at all and just do what boxers do and get beaten by Floyd Mayweather. So, as told to me by his coach, who came in with the mindset of disruption to approach it in this way, he did this for this reason. The fact that it failed just says Floyd Mayweather is fucking brilliant and made the right choice in real time, super fast, because that's what was the thing Conor did not have and that Floyd would beat him with? Floyd had to make things about experience. This guy's tough, this guy's smart, and these weirdos are they're going to come up with shit I haven't seen. They're going to try stuff, that weirdo in Canada may call it disruption. I'll just call it fuck. I don't know, and these guys are fucking, some people call it awkward, some people call it unconventional. Call it what the fuck you want. That's what's happening. Floyd has to make it like, although I know that's happening, if I can just make this about experience with this much energy, experience with later rounds, experience with knowing where the threats are and making the right choice, I'll beat this guy. He's bigger. He's dangerous. He's a fucking good fighter. But if I can make it about experience, I'll beat him. And that's what he did. And it was beautiful to watch. And there you can see some shit you could learn. It's not all right. It's not all correct. But it's all pretty sound, and it's all there. Now, you don't have to. You can look at this, and if the fucking game is we won, see, MMA sucks, fuck, man. We all do different shit. If you're a piano tuner, I don't know how to tune pianos. I don't spend my time getting sensitive to that. But if you're interested, these things are here, and they give you chances to look at choices and why and how and under pressure. And I know I'm sometimes critical of people who talk about fights who've never fought. But these moments in there are also done tired, scared, hurt, with in your ears, unable to breathe. These are the challenges that happen in your worst moment. Moments that most people can't experience, and when they do experience, they don't have to fight fucking Floyd Mayweather or Conor McGregor. It's a beautiful thing, fighting. It's an incredibly beautiful thing. My job is, as I see it, is to study what's happening and bring you the perspective of how beautiful it is in hopes that I can enrich your experience of watching it. Why do I want to do that? In hopes that as you look at it this way, these choices, Conor's choice to approach it this way, the correct choice, failed because this man made choices based on a lifetime of experience with feeling and vibe and understanding of the reality of the threats and took it away. And that's all there in that fight. It's all there and more. I'm going to watch that fight 30, 50 times in my life. I'm going to learn something different every single time. The result will never change. Floyd Mayweather beat Conor McGregor. But the truth of the fight will never change. Conor McGregor and his coach told me they were going to approach it looking for the bugs in the system of boxing itself. They found a couple. It was nowhere near enough because the man, the individual, was better than the approach. The individual, Floyd Mayweather. He was the better man, the better fighter. So let's talk about one other thing before I tell you what the last 3 years of study and what this disruption concept. It's not my concept, and it's not a theory. It's not a theory if they say, this is how we approach the fight. It's a concept. But one other thing, angles. So the next day, as people watched the fights, they said, well, it's crazy. Sorry, I'm crunching ice. My apologies. I really don't mean to wreck your ears or whatever, but I just really like iced coffee. So people would watch it and they'd be like, yeah, he came at him with different angles. There's more airplanes overhead. Should we be concerned? This is not normal. You know what I mean? This is not normal. So people came after and they said, yeah, like people who watch fighting a lot or people who analyze fighting or commentate fighting, other fighters, it was like, yeah, I came at him with different angles. And then they asked Mayweather and they said, you know, anything surprise you? Yeah, he came at him with some different angles. And so on my Facebook page, like that sounds like a fighter jet.
I think they might be practicing.
They could be the CNE. So if you hear that, I don't know if you do. Do you hear it in there? He does. The CNE is on this week, and I'm going to go to it on Saturday. And you eat crazy food, and you do hang out and whatever. Yeah, exactly. You will get food poisoning. Smoke weed and walk around in there. That's legal in Canada, by the way, or very close to it. You can buy it next door, literally next door right here. And I don't think you need a prescription. Where was I? Oh, yeah, so angles. So, and then my buddy David Klonsky is a doctor, a professor of psychology. We've done a lot of work together. He's been very helpful in me understanding a lot of the things. I've got a crew of psychology PhDs over the years. I'm very thankful for them. Tracy Trudeau, I'll tell you a study that she sent me. She's a psych PhD as well. A study about how and why people resist positive change. We'll talk about that in a second too. But so Dave puts up there, he's like, Dr. David, he says, you know, so people were talking about angles and some other people ridicule it, but when Mayweather himself says that the angles that he came at me with were different, it deserves examination. And I realized he was correct because a lot of the time now, like, you know, I've done it where I'll hear it's like, you know, Stan, who was great. And thanks for all your work, Brian. You were fantastic. And thanks for using Flim Flam in your commentary and stuff. I love that, man. I love him. But I'd watch him and he'd say, oh, he's cutting different angles. And I would realize that we've described nothing right there. And although people who do watch a lot of fighting or train fighting or whatever, they know instinctively what's happening there, that we've all done kind of a bad job of really giving people the idea. So I thought I would take that for a second. Conor McGregor hit Floyd Mayweather from many different angles. Floyd said so himself. Again, there are a lot of denialists in this fight. A lot. It's crazy. But again, we watched the same thing, but it was informed by our belief systems. And if we could solve the problem of why intelligent people yell at each other and call each other stupid when they watch the same fight, we would solve many of the problems in our countries and in politics and everything. So we're not equipped to do that. We just accept that that is so. Once we accept that it's so, we're still going to do it. We're still going to go, I can't fucking believe this guy believes this shit. He saw the same fight as me. What the fuck are you watching? We're going to do that. But then hopefully we can step back and go, wait a second, he's not an idiot. He's informed by the beliefs that he has. I use the word indoctrinated in beliefs. Some people don't like that word because they believe there's a negative connotation. So language is tricky. But they believe what they believe. So angles. So I started thinking about it. How could we explain this in a way that would enrich your experience when you watch fighting and let you think about it in many different ways? And I thought, Mark, if you look over here, this essentially I'm in a position that you can see me, right? So imagine you're my foe, or imagine I'm your opponent. And what I want you to do is picture, so I'm your opponent. Picture your hand right now and picture a red yarn that comes directly to my chin. Okay, just a piece of red yarn, picture it right in space. Now picture every angle, so one at a time, another angle, not moving anything, just my hand itself, how it could strike my chin in different ways and draw. And let's not play too much with range yet. Let's just imagine that more or less, even though your arm is bent, you can touch me. So one piece of yarn comes directly to my chin from your right hand. Another one comes up like this. Another one comes around like this. Another one comes over top like this. And every single way that you could throw that hand is all a piece of yarn. There's just a very simple idea of imagining the 3 dimensions of an angle, okay? Now, leave those yarn there. Picture me with all that yarn attached to me. Now dip your head out and bring it up. So now you dip your head out, you see all these different pieces of red yarn. If you're good at visualization, you've now imagined half a dozen pieces of red yarn to my chin. Dip it the other way and throw every punch you can think of throwing. Now, of course, some of these are off-balance punches, some of these are weaker punches, some of these punches leave us open, but I'm just giving you the possibility. So now you've imagined all these pieces of red yarn, these straight lines, curving lines, angled lines, all of which touch me. Now, if you would, just take a step to your right and do exactly the same thing. Holy fuck, that's a lot of yarn, right? You step over here, now you got all these other ones. Now step over there and drop your level. Actually, even before that, stay in your original position and just drop yourself down. Now come with all these different ones. See all that yarn? See all those red lines? Can you imagine this? Is this making sense? Now you're seeing all these red lines all coming at me. And I know this is very simplified, but we've never had this conversation. And for some people, they'd be like, holy fuck, that's a lot of yarn. It's a lot of red yarn. Now step over there, throw them all, step over there, fake step back. Now he's standing a different way. Now you've got all these other pieces of yarn. All of these are angles. And from everywhere we step, everywhere we pretend to step, everywhere we half step, when we pivot, when we drop our stuff, when we just come up, when we jump in the air, each one of those is now to my chin from your hand, all of these different dimensions. All of them. And now I have to get out of the way of them. I can do it by moving. I can do it by dropping. I can do it by moving forward. I can do it by blocking. I can do it by parrying. But I now, and Demetrius Johnson, trust me, I talked to him this week, and he does a lot of, they call it visualization. He calls it simulation because his brain is so deep into video games now. He's seeing reality differently. And I know that sounds like a big statement, but fuck, we're all seeing reality differently. We watch that fight. And 2 intelligent people can yell at each other that the other one's an idiot. We're all seeing it differently. But all of those now in 3 dimensions, every single one of them is available. So now, Koreatown, okay? We spend our lifetime evolving the way that we evolve as thinkers, as speakers, in our economic beliefs, in our religious beliefs, whatever. And boxing is a fucking belief system, as expressed by you. So Floyd, now, over time, he can start to remove certain ones. That's weak. And why? Because although you see every possibility, his sparring partners and or opponents start removing some. This one sucks because I'm off balance. This one sucks because I'm in danger of getting hit again. This one sucks because it's too slow from this way. This way I can't create any power. And whatever you're left with is every red piece of thread that Floyd has seen and started to process and anticipate and react to. So whatever those ones are that's left, and in the greats like Floyd, it's more than you. And by you, I mean everybody else. But it's not all of them. So wherever the missing ones are the ones you can throw. Sometimes when you throw them, you're off balance, or you're out of position, or you're in position to get hit. But those are the ones that might hit. And that uppercut was one of those threads that Floyd or his team or the people he sparred with just took out. That thread, that 3 dimensions, it was one of these ones on a thing that's never thrown from a position that you never throw it, or rarely throw it, or haven't thrown it in years, or only amateurs throw it, or whatever. Is this making sense? Mark's hesitantly giving me a yes. But you see it, right? Put every single possible angle and then take away the ones that are shitty. Take away the bad ones. Shitty. Wrong. Okay? This is how we're disrupting. Bruce Lee shit. Right? Fuck. I really didn't think there was going to be any chance that I would have to defend this theory. Fuck's sake, like, it's only the beginning of what I actually want to talk to you about. And I certainly didn't think that, people who study fighting would be the ones to do it. Now, again, there are many reasons. At first, I took that same response, fuck, you're stupid. But then I realized there are many self-serving reasons people can do that. And that's part of the game. But this is just the truth. So let me take this to where we're going. Why did I use McGregor Mayweather was a perfect one because it was undeniably obvious to even the stupidest person. I know right there I'm actually being an asshole. That's really not true. But when you really think about it, whether we use the yarn or we use Koreatown or we use whatever, if you believe all these things are the way it is and somebody believes something different, that's their best chance. I don't know what else to say. Like, the biggest one, somebody was like, show me evidence. Go to the YouTube channel and watch John Kavanaugh say, this is what we did. There's your fucking evidence. I don't know what else to say. I really don't know what else. Like, I'm trying to picture this truth and take into account that people's other belief systems are rooted in other things, and that there are things along this line that I'll say that some people would find some reason to want to not believe, or it threatens their beliefs or whatever. But anyways, this is, as said by Connor and Coach Kavanaugh, this is what they did. So this I started to introduce because, and I thought it would be exciting, it would help me flush it out. It ended up being 8-10 hours of exploration, one of the greatest times of my life. I've never really had such an awakening of thoughts because I learned how to sit and speak and express myself and be wrong and be okay with being wrong and explore the incorrect and come back to the other thing. And it's been a real gift. It also, there's a lot of people who are like, wow, that guy thinks differently. And I think thinking differently is good. Right? So let's get down to what the real concept is. Okay? Now, at the beginning, I said we are in the golden age of martial arts. And when you're in any kind of age that history will look back at, you never know you're in it. Or rarely, or usually when it's gone by quite a lot. And in this case, this golden age of martial arts has actually been happening for years. I just wasn't sophisticated enough to see it, despite the fact that it was being told by geniuses to me for years. And that I was in middle of conversation with geniuses about it, and I still didn't realize it, because the last thing the fish, I am a fish, discover is the water, and we're in the water. We're in the golden age of martial arts. So what am I talking about? Jesus Christ, Robin Black, what are you talking about? I'm talking about, okay, how did MMA start? MMA started when we had all these different things. We had Koreatown, and we had Chinatown, and we had Greektown, and what's the Little Italy? What's the neighborhood you live in? Does it have a name? Brampton. Brampton. We had all these little different cultures, and they all moved out onto their own. MMA said, I want all y'all to come in. And Toronto actually is very much like this. Toronto's like, fucking get down here, bring your best food, bring your best music, bring your best women, bring the most interesting men, et cetera, and let's see what happens when we put you all together. What you get is Toronto. And that's what mixed martial arts was. Mixed martial arts was this incredible bringing together of everything. Now, at first it was, let's see who's better. All right, turned out the Greeks were better. I don't know. It's made up Greeks because Elias Theodorou came to mind, and he's pretty handsome and very successful. And the taste of Danforth is awesome. So we brought it all together, turned out the Greeks were the best. But not for very long, because pretty soon, as different people took a little bit of the spice from Greek food, and then they added it to, Indian food, all of a sudden you got this new food. They called it MMA. So MMA, for a long time, moved towards, let's figure out the perfect blend of everything. And for a while, George St. Pierre, maybe that would be that moment in time where we're like, this is what MMA is. It is a combination of some of this, those things. When you put them together, it's this. Here's where the problem arose. It was something that Ramdeen and I started talking about quite a few years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago now. We saw this as obsessives who are just nerding the fuck out on this. And we started asking about it because we didn't understand. And the question was, we know that martial arts will evolve. This question's been bothering me, like it's been driving me for years. We know that martial arts will look different in the year 2040. So why are we training it like it's complete? Why the very lessons that MMA learned about Muay Thai and boxing and jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and sumo was that your belief that your art is complete is your weakness. And once you add all these other things, you find that there's a million other things you can do. And yet, somehow, the organism that is changing MMA took on those very same qualities. Everybody trained exactly the same. Why? Because the right thing to do is to have an underhook and have head position and get inside bicep control and pressure the hip. The correct thing. Bullshit. And I started asking about this for the last 3 years because I'm in gyms and every gym is training exactly the same. Why? Because this is the correct way to train MMA. Box this way, land that, off that, get down, sprawl on that. When somebody gets a single, do this. When somebody gets that, do that. It centralized. It became exactly the same. And of course, again, the limitations in our language, there were outliers and there were variables. But if you go in and they're being honest, and I've been discussing this with the top people for the last 4 years as I've been curious and not understanding it. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. I saw this and I'm like, they're doing what every other martial arts did. They're developing doctrines and beliefs and structures, dogma. This is how you have to fight. That can't be right. It's never been right. So I started asking. And over time, like, how could that be correct? You just disproved that with every other martial art. And now, free fighting, that's what it is. It's free fighting. By the way, it was really cool when Conor McGregor called himself a two-division free fighting champion, because he got that from me. And I know I didn't invent the term free fighting, but I've used it a lot in the last few weeks, and now McGregor's calling himself that. And that's really cool. It's free fighting. If it's free fighting, it isn't a stable martial art. Always kick this way, never move that way. And yes, there were outliers. And yes, people thought a little differently. But you can't. The front kick doesn't work in MMA. This is only a few years ago. When did Lyoto kick Randy in the face? It was in Toronto. Maybe 5 years ago. Maybe 6 years ago. Up until that, you couldn't use. Don't front kick. It doesn't work. Who landed the first spin kick? Edson Barbosa. Don't use the spin kick. It doesn't work. It fucking works all the time. Never do this. The can opener does it. Like on and on and on. It developed its own dogmatic belief system. So that to me didn't make any sense. I couldn't understand it. And I was going into more and more gyms and everybody trained exactly the same way under the beliefs that these are and it was basically George. They basically all modeled George St. Pierre, who was modeled after a combination of other things. And about 2.5 years ago, can you see when Demetrius Johnson fought in Quebec City? I think Bisping was on that card. Demetrius Johnson in Quebec City, I think it might have been against the Japanese kid, the last-minute armbar. Against Horiguchi. That kid's good, too. Horiguchi, in his own way, was pioneering different ideas of outside fighting at the time. Was it Quebec City or was it Montreal?
Yeah, it was Montreal.
Montreal?
April 2015.
2015, so just a little over 2 years ago. I looked over, and there was this incredibly long lineup, like maybe 25 guys. And me and Ramdeen were standing back, and then another guy, Chuck Mindenhall, was standing back. And we'd watch together, one after the other. One guy would come up and go, Demetrius, you're the best fighter in the world. Why aren't you selling a lot of pay-per-views? And he would say whatever answer he was going to say. And then that guy would, thanks, Demetrius, have one or two other questions and leave. Next guy would come up. Demetrius, you're not a pay-per-view hit, but you're the best. Over and over. There was 40 of these guys, 25, 30, 40, all in a row. Almost nobody else. Bisping's over there. I think Rampage was on that card against Maldonado, if I'm not mistaken. Great card. Oh, no, against that Army Ranger, I think. I don't know. They blend. It all kind of blends together. So I'm like, that's so weird. So then Matt Hume walks in the room, and me and Ram Dean start going over there, and so does Chuck Mindenhall. Now, if Ram Dean and I were the only ones that went over, we would be thinking it's like, they don't make any sense to us. Let's go do this. But Chuck going over, and Chuck's very different. Chuck thinks very differently than I. Chuck, and I let Chuck, we went over and we both went like this, and I invited him to go first. He had a conversation with Matt about life and about journey and about Demetrius's life and about all these different things. He just thought way different than those guys. And then I had my time, and me and Ram Dean, and we got a little of it on camera, but the best 25, 30 minutes was off camera. It's often the case, and over the last number of years for me has often been the case. And I said something about that, and he said, yeah, it's like an invisible cage. You just believe that it has to be this way. Now, if we were the only one, they believe that, and we believe this. But Chuck also wasn't affected by that cage, but he thought differently than we did. So it wasn't like there was only that way or this way. There was also another way. So the similarities that we had with Chuck was and Chuck said to me that day, he goes, because I asked him about it, and he said, well, if you have the same story as everybody else, you really have nothing. I was like, wow. And from just their job point of view, if the internet is choosing what to watch, and there's 40 of them, they will divide up that pie 40 ways. Chuck's pie is just Chuck's pie. He's different. He'll result different. So that was interesting. And I asked Matt about that, and he said, well, there's an invisible cage. And I kind of didn't really understand. And he said, martial arts has that too. And he goes, and that's how we've developed Demetrius, and that's how we've developed searching for perfection, is let them have their invisible cage and find out where they're wrong. Find out what else there is outside of that cage. And I didn't really understand. I really didn't understand. And Matt's not, and I don't know him super well. We've corresponded a little bit, and that day, and I've had a couple other chats with him. Once while very drunk in, actually might have been the same weekend, but earlier, a day or two before. And I had been sending him questions and stuff, and he's got a mind on it that is strictly about the truth of martial arts. And we talked about that, the truth of martial arts, and how that's not in the things that people say. It's not in always put your foot here, or never put this, or the Thai plum or the clinch must be performed this way. That's the invisible cage. You believe that. Those guys all believed they had to ask Demetrius that. And in fact, the producer of ours, who I love, and I know we slowly pulled him outside of that invisible cage. He was like, guys, you got to ask him that. We're like, we're not doing it. And he goes, no, but that's the story. I'm like, it can't be the story. There's 40 of them. And he goes, well, that's because it's the story. And I'm like, no, the story is outside of those 40. They're all asking it. And fighting is outside of that cage too. There's no way that fighting will look the same in 2030, 2020. As it looks today, which means the things that you believe, many of the things you believe are wrong. It was wrong you couldn't kick in with a front kick. It was wrong you couldn't use a spin kick. It was wrong that the can opener was gone. And it's wrong that the guard is dead. And don't worry, it won't be long till the people who believe the guard is dead are losing fights, because the guard's not dead. Somebody else is secretly over there asking the question with Chuck. Well, they're all standing over there with the guard is dead. This is what it is. And this is the whole story. So Conor, looking to use this thinking that is the global thinking of how fighting is being grown right now. This is the global thinking. Conor was your introduction. Conor was your easy. Conor was your little menu that I was going to offer because this is what's happening. That one would be easy for you to understand. And most of you did. Almost everybody did. They looked at it and they're like, yeah, I get it. That's fucking obvious. It's like, we'll try to find the bug in the system. I get it. Oh, turns out that's what Kavanaugh said, is they were looking for the bugs in the system. Oh, cool. Yeah, made sense to me. But there are denialists who want to deny that. But that's just too bad now. Because, so Matt Hume opens my eyes to that, and I didn't get it. Outside, the invisible bars, they believe something, but their belief is strong, but it's not true. There's actually, Demetrius is the best in the world. P.S. I don't care why people pay-per-view or not pay-per-view. It doesn't matter to me. What I care about is why he's the best in the world. Oh, his coach is thinking outside of some invisible bars. He's identified that something is making them fight this way and believe this is so, and it's not so. Okay? So, didn't quite get it, but spent a long time, years, trying to figure that out. Didn't reject it, didn't just accept it, just sought for a truth. What was that, 2.5 years ago, you said? Yeah. So a lot of evidence, a lot of asking, a lot of research, a lot of study, a lot of trying that mindset, a lot of looking that way. And then last year, in December, my very favorite martial artist in the world, Cub Swanson, is fighting Doo Ho Choi. You saw that fight, right? It's fucking unbelievable. It's brilliant. So it was just this fight this weekend, Conor and Floyd, was one of those ones for me where it was such a joy. And I kind of fucked it up a little bit in the days after, being frustrated with the conversation around it. But it hasn't changed it for me. It was a joy to see. But when Cub fought Doo Ho Choi, and I had watched Doo Ho Choi I had commentated his fights since before the UFC. And analyzed him and studied him, and he was truly one of my favorites. And any other fighter on earth that he'd be fighting except for Cub Swanson, I'd be all about that. But instead, I had two of my favorites, but everybody has a favorite band or artist or podcaster. Who's your favorite comedian? Dave Chappelle is his favorite comedian. So if Dave Chappelle's there with another one of your favorite comedians, you can't believe it, it's amazing. But really, that's your guy. Which is actually frustrating when a couple of them come together. Bisping and George is like that for me. It's tough. It's tough to watch. But yeah, Chuck Vanderlei. I mean, we're all pretty thrilled we finally got that fight when we got it. And it was pretty amazing. And what did Chuck do? Operated outside of what Vanderlei believed Chuck does. Fucking took him down at the end. This is the global story. This is where fighting is. This is what martial arts are right now. So we watched that beautiful fight. And I'm on just over the moon, overstimulated with like what I've seen and joy and stuff. And so then this other great joy, I get to talk to Greg Jackson. And I said to Greg, this is now December of last year, so we're going on 8-9 months ago. I said, Greg, when everybody's training the same and they're moving in a direction, but martial arts is changing. I've been asking this fucking question for 2.5 years, trying to find the truth. What do you do? And he says, well, Robin, what you do is you decentralize your system. You find the differences. And you can find this interview, and again, there was 20 minutes going in and 20 minutes going out. And this is an error I make often, but often it's like the camera's got to go somewhere else. And I'll just is there anything I can learn from you? And he said, you decentralize your system. You find there are principles, but the rules are not real. You find where people believe that there are rules, and you explore principles, and he kind of got into this idea of decentralizing your system. And that's where we are. Why is this the golden age of martial arts? Because this is the grand decentralization of martial arts. The grand decentralization of martial arts, and we're in it. It's been happening for years. You might want to resist it when it's explained to you that McGregor is playing this approach, but they're all doing this. They've all been doing this within MMA, and of course it happens in jiu-jitsu, and of course it happens in boxing, but it has grown in MMA on a level and in a way that it is the fundamental truth of how these high-level people are growing and how the organism that is fighting itself is changing. So Bruce Lee said, Learn the principles, abide by the principles, then dissolve the principles. And he was talking about the individual. That's how you learn to fight. If you're going to be great, if you're going to be a great martial artist, you learn the principles, you abide by the principles, then you dissolve the principles. But the organism of the game itself is now in step 3. Dissolve the principles. Why is that threatening to some people? Because they're still either at one of these 2 stages. They're not ready for this. If you're a young fighter, you're not ready for this. If you're a part-time analyst, you're not ready for this. But that's where we are. Dissolve the principles. The great decentralization of martial arts. You go back, Greg Jackson's been on that for years. Matt Hume's been on that for years. And once Greg made me understand it, that's all you see, because that's all there is. It's not this bullshit. When he throws this, make sure you do that and always land here and never. Go fucking talk to Bang Ludwig. He's fucking decentralized that shit a long time ago. Mark, read what the definition of decentralization is. Loud if you can.
Decentralization is the process of redistributing or dispersing functions, powers, people, or things away from a central location or authority.
Okay. The authority was the grand authority. You must fight this way. Never do this. Front kicks don't work. Never punch from this range. Always do that. Make sure you return this. That authority is, what up, brother? That authority is the invisible cage. That authority is fucking bullshit. We know some of it's real. And the job becomes, what are the true principles and what is the invisible cage? What is the authority that you are listening to? And that's what McGregor was looking to do. Where is the invisible cage in the belief system of boxing? If we know that in 50 years it'll look different, that means it's not fully complete. It'll never be fully complete. And we find the holes. That's what he attempted to do, and he failed. But this is what they're all doing. It is the great decentralization of martial arts, and as a result, we are in the golden age of martial arts. Now, so Greg Jackson gives me that idea. This is what they're doing. We talked about Cub, we talked about Groovy Lando, etc. So I had the good fortune of being released from a job, and I had the good fortune of being in a position that my study and my curiosity was going to be funded, because it turned out there were enough people out there going, actually, what this guy's doing may be of some value to me. And then we started this YouTube channel because of Mark, and these created an environment where I could go pursue these things. So I got on a fucking plane and I went to Albuquerque. And I spent a couple days with Six Gun Gibson and Cub Swanson, exploring where they are looking for the holes, where they're looking for Koreatown evolved this way, but Korea evolved this way. What if we're something even different than those? Where they're looking for, here's where the red yarn all lines up. Here's the large clumps of the red yarn that they removed. Let's be there. So I studied with them. Then I got on a plane and I went to South Korea, where I went to study Do-Ho Choi, who was thinking very differently. And in fact, speaking of Korea is evolving in its own way. There is no fucking central authority. It's become decentralized. Always work the underhook. Fuck the underhook. If the battle is always to get the underhook, become brilliant at the overhook. Surrender the underhook and dominate the overhook. Most of the system is just beliefs. It's a invisible cage. So it started with Matt Hume making me understand they were doing that. Then I went and spoke with Greg Jackson, who told me straight up, we are decentralizing our systems. And right from there, that was the study, and that's where this was going. And seeing McGregor Mayweather as our chance to show this and share this, that's all it was. It was step one. It was bite-sized. It was supposed to be easy to understand. You reject it. This one is non-rejectable. Because now, what people are going to do, they're going to call Matt Hume. He's going to go, yeah, I mean, most of the things people believe. When you hear these part-time analysts and these hobbyists and fans with, and even fighters who commentate on the weekends, they're telling these things that are absolutely untrue. And we hope that our opponents believe them because we operate outside of those beliefs. Studied Doo Ho Choi, most of that shit doesn't apply to him at all. And he's knocking everybody out, except for Cub Swanson, where these two decentralized fighters come together and you get this beautiful thing. And I went in and saw the Korean Zombie. And the Korean Zombie rejects most of that shit, doesn't train it all the way that MMA is trained, was trained. It's not trained that way now. It's become decentralized. He was training fencing, distancing on his brand new fighters. Brand fucking new. Didn't teach him how to punch. And yeah, you always learn to move before you learn to kick. But they were moving different. They were starting right from fencing style distancing. Playing on the outside, fencing style distancing. Alone. He doesn't even have coaches anymore. Now that's a whole other conversation. But he doesn't even have coaches anymore. He believes that those are limiting ideas. Always do this, never do that. In this position, you're in. He's like, this is free fighting. This is an art form. This is, and I've said this before, and I will say it again. This is not ones, twos, and threes. And it's not A's, B's, and C's. It's do, re, me's, motherfucker. It's art. It's fucking art. And there are huge flaws in what's happening and the way we're sharing it and the way we're talking about it and the way we're presenting it. But it is the great fucking golden age of fighting. It is the decentralization of these concepts. Authority. The authority was the invisible cage that says you must fight this way. Never throw a front kick. Now, I could use these examples over and over. I feel like I have to because, I mean, what I'm saying is the truth. And yet I feel like I'm going to have to debate it, which is fucking bizarre. But I hope not. So Greg Jackson tells me that, and I go and I study these guys, and suddenly I find this is happening everywhere. There was another description. I mean, decentralization, whether you go to a dictionary or Wikipedia or, some example of it in history or some example of it in government or whatever. Decentralization is where this is all here, and instead it goes off into smaller things with no authority, where the Korean zombies of the world are creating their own world, completely rejecting the authority of the old belief system. But what was the other one we liked?
In a decentralized system, there is no single centralized authority that makes decisions on behalf of all the parties.
In a decentralized system, there is no singular authority.
There's no single
centralized authority
that makes decisions on behalf of all the parties. In other words, these guys are all training fucking differently now. And what they're looking to do is figure out what you believe, because it's just your belief. Always do this, never do this. Make sure you stand there. Always keep your hands up. Fuck, always keep your hands up. Anderson Silva. Well, I mean, you know what I mean? I'm trying to find the most obvious examples to explain this golden age of fighting. I hope I'm doing an okay job. It's important to me to do an okay job of explaining this. It's what we're seeing. So after I got back from Korea, and actually even before, Dean Thomas and Mike Brown. Mike Brown has become a friend. I've had him on. I've had conversations with him about the game. He's a genius. He's brilliant. Originated in boxing, or originated in wrestling. Let's say that's Korea. But then started in MMA, Koreatown. Just grew off and became his own thing. He started to decentralize the system in the training room. When they see something that is different, they stop and examine it. Different, not wrong. There is no wrong. If you get knocked unconscious, you made the wrong choice. But there's no wrong. And as soon as people started to grasp that, and this is what the global thinking is right now, you're being sold bullshit. People are like, this is how the stance is. And look around you. There's 1,000 stances. Always throw like this with this. Look around you. There's 1,000 ways they're throwing it. Connor was boxing. I've trained karate exactly the same way. Karate. I've taken karate lessons where they throw like that. Well, it originated in boxing. Now we're arguing about words. We have decentralized the game. There is no authority. There are almost no rules. There are truths. When you fall down, you hit the ground. If you get poked in the eye, you can't see. When you get tired, it is harder to breathe. Even that can be fudged with if we train you right. There's very few, but there are rules and there are principles. If you push, I pull. Like Floyd did, if I use too much energy, it hurts me. What if I use non-resistance? These are principles that will be applied in most situations. This is what Matt Hume was telling me 2.5 years ago when his guy was taking off ahead of everybody. Now Mike Brown, I talked to Mike Brown, he's like, yeah, of course. We used to do everything the same, now we do everything different. And in doing so, we learned that the things we believed were untrue, many of them. Dean Thomas, his disruption or decentralization is watching the game change. And as he watches it change, he's able to anticipate where it will go, and based on trends. And trends are just agreements and beliefs. We just all agree. Oh, shit, you know what works? Double leg takedown. As a trend, the double leg takedown's happening. Dean's studying that and forecasting where that's going, maybe even skipping over that, because in the 6 months it'll take to train to do the thing that is the trend right now, if we invested that 6 months into beating where we know it's going in a year, well, this is what's happening. This idea that things must be, this institution, this authority, completely shattered and decentralized. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing it everywhere. I talked to Duke Rufus, and Duke will look for things from the past, a different type of shakeup, decentralization, fucking disruption. The words are irrelevant. I just hope I can get this idea across. So Duke will go, oh, the Cubans back in the 50s did this. People haven't been doing it. Why not? It still works. Oh, the fact that they no longer believe that or train that leaves this open. This is how the whole game is being played. Nobody is going in. The beginners, they have to learn the system, learn the principles. They have to abide by the principles. But we're now at a point where the game itself, the organism of fighting, what it is, what the top people are, what the top knowledge is, what's going on in the top rooms, this thing is at dissolve the principles. So when I say Conor McGregor will look to dissolve the principles, that's what he looked to do. That's what he did. It failed. But that in no way doesn't make it valid. Because you know how bad he would have failed if he just tried to box that guy the same as everybody else? Failed worse. But we don't get two fights to compare it. All we get is one result. And if you're really result-oriented, see, that result proves it. That was stupid. That wasn't even real. Fuck, you lost. You lost. This is what's happening. Globally. We're in the great disruption of mixed martial arts, or of martial arts. The greatest period that's ever existed in fighting ever. In it, right now. So then I'm carrying this on. I'm telling the story from where this learning began and how I started to understand. Because if I just tell it to you, who the fuck is this guy's up in Canada? I'm telling you where I learned it from, the geniuses I learned it from. Dean Thomas is so far ahead of somebody else, and the brand new coach who comes in and goes, you know, when you're fighting Dean's guys, you got to make sure as he retracts that jab, you get your two in there and circle under. Fuck, man, that's not gonna cut it. Dean's fucking 2 years ahead of you. And then just so all of this is coming together, and I realize McGregor Mayweather will be the perfect launching off point, the perfect chance, because it's so obvious. It'll be the perfect way to introduce this idea, this truth, the golden age of fighting, the great disruption of mixed martial arts. Sorry, the great disruption of martial arts. We're in it. You're in it. Congratulations. You live in the time that's the greatest time ever to be a fan of fighting. Congrats. And so then just a few weeks ago, over the last few weeks, I got to be embedded with George St. Pierre. Not in bed with George St. Pierre. Embedded with George St. Pierre. As he trains, I got to train with him, got to spar with him, got to train different types of martial arts with him, got to grapple, got to be submitted 37 times, got to try to punch him, and when he blocked it, it hurt my shoulder really badly. Shit like that. Train with him. And George, the most interesting, fuck, you learn a lot. And I'm going to talk about them as the fight gets closer. I'm going to have to go down, really journal out all the things I learned from George, and I'll never be able to do it. I've made some notes every day after I train with him. But the most incredible thing I saw was he goes in there and he sits down for long periods of time when he's done for the day, he's still learning, and he watches white belts. Just watches them. He said he learned so much because they don't know the rules yet. the rules. What was it? Authority. The authority. They don't need to decentralize and break away from an invisible cage of authority. They don't know it yet. So he watches them. He's like, they come up with incredible positions I would have never thought of. George St. Pierre, who was what they modeled the centralization of martial arts after, is now studying white belts as the world of martial arts decentralizes from these belief systems, many of which are not right. Imagine what fighting's going to look like in 2070. It won't look anything like today. If that's so, then what's today in the long evolution will not be so. And then some stuff from today will reappear. People, holy shit, I didn't know that. It's of course not. You forgot it. It happened in 2015. That's what fighting is. But right now it's decentralizing. And what it was all centralized around, the great George St. Pierre is studying white belts to continue his decentralization and the global decentralization of martial arts. And when I talked about boxing going in, very wrong. Somewhere in my use of language, I know about every 20 minutes I said, I love boxing, I love it, it's a beautiful martial art, and I love karate, and I love taekwondo, and I love all of it. People ridicule Aikido. You know how much you can learn from Aikido? And I love boxing. But boxing evolved in its own way. And when I talk to boxing people, and it's not every one of them, it's not Gervonta. Gervonta will look at this fight and learn a million things. And it won't be the young guys. Alex Cooper, Stipe's coach. Guy's thinking so fucking different. So fucking different. Look at Stipe fight. So different. But they're not all doing that. But I talk to a lot of boxing people, high up boxing people, and they literally, I would say there's so much to learn from this fight. There's so much to learn just from the existence of the fight. And they're like, you really think that in a world of Sugar Ray Leonard and in a world, and Muhammad Ali, and they list all these greats, you could learn something from this guy? That was said to me a lot. I know that doesn't represent all boxing people. It was said to me a lot. I started hashtag congrats, you've learned nothing. That was perhaps rude. But it was also hoping to stimulate conversation. So many people said there was nothing to learn. George St. Pierre watches white belts and learns. George St. Pierre watches white belts for long chunks of period because he knows you can learn. And many of these guys can't learn from watching Conor McGregor fight, an 0-0 fighter landing on the greatest of all time, finding different positions, expressing fighting differently. There's nothing to be learned there. George St. Pierre learns from white belts. Come on. It's disappointing. It really is. But you know what isn't disappointing? The golden age of fighting. We're in it. We're in it. We're in it right now. May it last for 10 more years, and it might. And ultimately, and I'll tell you, Dean Thomas had this conversation with him. You'll decentralize for so long, eventually, these old ideas that people have been doing and talking about over the last few years and acting as if they're still new ideas or still the truth. Always throw a right hand after a jab. Never dip your head this way. Those will become true again one day. I have so much other thoughts on this, and I'm excited to share them. I just don't know where to stop today and come back next time. But we're in it. This is it. So when Rome fell, or if something was happening in Egypt, or there was a great change, or the American, whatever times we're in, we don't realize it. Please realize you're in the golden age of fighting right now. The great decentralization of martial arts. And again, go ask Matt Hume. Go ask Greg Jackson. Go ask Cub, Du Ho Choi, Mike Brown, Dean Thomas, Duke Faraz, George St. Pierre. Go ask those guys, hey, is this how you're thinking? Is this how you're approaching fighting? Go ask Six Gun Gibson. Is this how you're approaching fighting? Are you looking at it and suddenly realizing many of this institution or authority of beliefs is just an invisible cage, as Matt told me 2.5 years ago? They'll tell you that's how they're thinking. Just like Coach Kavanaugh told me that's how they were thinking. This is how fighting is being grown right now. I'm just the messenger. But congrats, you're in the best period ever to be a fight fan. So this is called Water, the Study of Martial Arts. Studying McGregor was so thrilling, and this open-ended, big picture study. Partly, you have to react to what you react to. I didn't have the footage to go in and do the old school breakdowns like I used to. So I had to move out to a different perspective. And that perspective, based on my research over the last few years since that chat with Matt Hume, has led me here. And it's so thrilling for me that even though McGregor Mayweather is over, we're starting a new thing. So water dash the study of martial arts, number 1. My apologies. I'm sure there's lots of podcasts called Like Water or In the Water or The Changing Water. If mine's too similar, someone let me know. We'll change it. I didn't really go and check. The world is full of things. But it's very exciting. If you stayed here with me this whole time on iTunes or SoundCloud or YouTube, thank you. We appreciate that there's been a lot of people coming on our Patreon page lately. patreon.com/Robin Black. People have been supporting our work so that we can go out and continue this study. Thank you for sharing our stuff. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Robin Black MMA. And if you're on Twitter, sometimes you can come right in here on this here thing, Periscope. We'll be back every week. Every week we're going to push some of these thoughts now as we've entered a macro view of fighting, and we have the ability to talk to the greatest coaches in the world, and we have the ability to embed with people like Faraz and George St. Pierre on a regular basis. We're able to see things that others can't see, and they can only theorize. And if we can see those and I bring them out into the conversation, that's my job. That's what I want to do. The golden age of martial arts. Congrats. This is where you live. Enjoy the hostilities, my friends. Blackout.